Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Play Pause Rewind. We hope you all had a very happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, or just a good 2 weeks if you don't. Niles, how have you been these last 2 very busy weeks? We work in the marketing world, so it's been kind of wild. Have you experienced that as well?
It's a busy time. I'm in a different kind of like category than you, I think, in the marketing world, so it's a little bit different for me.
Yeah.
You're more
Retail focused.
Retail focused, and I'm more service based, so it's a little bit different, but clients are clients and they got demands, and it was nice to have a holiday break for a few days and not have to worry about work. All things are good. I'm excited and a little frustrated to talk about this movie today.
Oh my.
We're just frustrated with some things about the movie. We'll talk about it later. How are you, Dylan?
I'm great. I went home for a little bit for the holiday, which was nice. We got to see family and friends from there. I came back and found out we have a mask mandate in Denver now, which I was not aware of. I'm glad I went to get a coffee yesterday, and I'm glad I should bring this just in case, because I walked up to the door, and I was like, oh, okay, we're back here.
Yeah, it's not the direction you want to see things going with the mask mandate, but
no,
people are scared, I guess, kind of. With
well,
the Omicron thing.
It's the hot. No, it's not that. I mean, that's coming. It's the hospitals, and I did enjoy our municipal government officials were basically like directly, if you are unvaccinated, this is your fault. They were like 83% of our hospitalizations are unvaxxed people. Like, get your shit together. So, yeah. But it's okay. It's fine. But we're going to talk about House of Gucci. Gucci. And this House of Gucci is a film directed by Ridley Scott and written by Becky Johnson and Roberto Bentivegna. And it's based on a book. I didn't know that. A book by Sarah Gay Forden. And the film follows I'm just going to summarize it as the relationship between Patrizia Reggiani and Maurizio Gucci, the broader dynamics of the Gucci family, and how their marriage affects the family and the business over a couple decades. Film stars Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Al Pacino, Jared Leto, Jeremy Irons, Jack Huston, and Salma Hayek. Niles, what were your overall thoughts of House of Gucci? We're going to do non-spoilers for a couple minutes, then hop into spoilers.
Yeah, I liked a lot of this movie. I'll say that to kick things off. I thought it was a very captivating tale because, like you were just saying, it kind of highlights this relationship between Patrizia and Maurizio, both played by Lady Gaga and Adam Driver, and it's a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. But this is such an interesting tale of like greed and ambition and family and betrayal and excess, and like it's captivating. It's interesting, and I thought the entire movie was very beautifully shot, really well done. Like Ridley Scott always does like a really good job with the visuals, and just kind of establishing things very clearly. Like I really enjoyed that, and for those people who are newer to the podcast or don't really know me, I studied abroad in Italy. Dylan and I met in college, and I actually double majored in Italian. Word to the wise: do not. It's probably best to not get like a degree in a foreign language unless you plan on using it. But it's okay. I had a great time. It helped me study abroad, and Italy is such a gorgeous country. I got to study abroad there for like 3.5 months. And even then, that wasn't enough time to see this entire country. And I really enjoyed how this movie highlighted a lot of these gorgeous settings in like Tuscany and in, northern Italy and, just kind of all over Italy. Like even, I think that they were in Sicily at one point too. Can't remember, but they traveled a lot. And I really liked seeing like all those very intriguing scenes. It was really neat. Dylan, what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
Oh, I really enjoyed this movie a lot, and I agree, very visually beautiful and well shot. I think even in Ridley Scott's movies that I don't like as much, like in Alien Covenant, it always looks beautiful. The directing is great, the production design is great, and that carries through to this. And I mean, Ridley Scott's made some of my favorite movies too, so It's like he's a great director. He knows his shit.
Yeah.
Obviously. I just overall really enjoyed it. I agree that a lot of the characters are a little bit unlikable, which is intentional. You have that in notes later. You haven't said it yet.
Yes.
We have not skipped over this information, viewer. But really fun. The performances were all great as well. I think the accents, which we'll talk about later, maybe not so great in some places, but I found it either not that distracting or, in one specific case, incredibly funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, this film, because it is kind of a story that we've seen before in a way, it's definitely its own, because it highlights like the history of Gucci, the company, the clothing company that we all know. It's one of the most successful brands in the world today. Like, I think like at the end of the movie, like, not to spoil too much, of course, but we all know what Gucci is today, and it's this brand that's like worth billions and billions of dollars. I can't remember the exact number that they threw up on the screen at that point. Yeah, thank you. But like, so we don't really know this story of Gucci per se, but like, this is kind of like
18.2 billion. 18.2 billion as of 2020. So it's a big business. It's a like high-end luxury fashion brand, and it,
Yeah. They market themselves on their exclusivity and like their incredible quality, and like, good for them. Like, that's fine. I don't really care. But I feel like we've kind of seen like a similar story of like portraying like the greed behind like a big company. Like, I think there's like I haven't watched it yet, but there's that whole HBO show Succession, which I'm sure kind of touches on similar themes and kind of plot points, because that seems about like family betrayal and like, a family business. It's kind of like The Godfather in a way too, but like not as like down to earth. Like, this is like big money. This is a big company that's in everyone's eyes. So I feel like it was, in that regard, it might have been a tiny bit formulaic or a little campy, but it was still good. And I greatly appreciated the Italiano molto bene and genio.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and sure, I agree. We've seen this type of narrative before, but I don't think there's anything new under the sun. And it's more about like, is it a fun ride or not? And I think this was. I mean, if you're going to tell it, this is that story told very well. And and we'll talk about it more in spoilers, but I did not know this story. And when I first saw the trailers for this movie, I very specifically avoided looking up any of the history of the Gucci family. Not that inspired by true story means this is how it went down, because it was probably very different in reality, as it always is in these cases. But I had a really good time with this movie. I thought it looked great. I thought the performances were great. The soundtrack you mentioned here is pretty fantastic. Had some songs that I really love outside of movies too. So
yeah, plenty of like bangers from like the 80s and 70s and like even into the 90s. Like, soundtrack was awesome, and I loved how it wasn't just like the American version or the English version. It was like, no, let's put the Italian version in there.
That was fun too.
And I appreciated that. If it kind of added like an extra layer to the film, made it feel a little bit more genuine. But yeah, I think at some points it might have been a little bit exaggerated, and we'll get into it a little bit later. I do think that I had some issues with some of the characters. But yeah, we'll talk about that in just a bit so we don't spoil too much. But yeah, the soundtrack was awesome overall. Before we move on, Dylan, let me just ask, are you a fan of Gucci?
Sure, man. I guess. I have nothing. I have no strong feelings about Gucci. Their stuff looks nice, I guess. But I haven't really looked. I've never been into their stores because, I mean, it's one of the first lines of the movie. You think you can afford it, you cannot. So I have not gone in. What about you, Niles? Are you a Gucci fan? Do you wear Gucci?
Man. Oh boy, if I had an excessive amount of money, maybe. But you know me, I go to thrift stores. I'm wearing T-shirts that are 8 years old. That's Gucci to me.
Oh, okay. Well, you could get the knockoff street version of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a good idea. I should
Yes.
look around for
Yeah,
those.
you got to go to New York though. So you got to save up for that plane ticket and then you can get it there. Yeah, well, let's we've been talking about 10 minutes. Let's jump into spoilers because then we can really talk about the movie. Did you know anything about this story going in? Cuz I did not.
I did
like
not.
I said earlier.
I did not. Like I think that I knew that there was a book about it. My girlfriend, she was listening to like a podcast about it for a little bit, and I listened in like briefly for an episode. So that's when I realized that it was based on a book. You know, they were kind of talking about it and like what happened with it. But I knew nothing about this story at all.
Okay. Yeah, I only knew what the trailers were showing me, and it went down a little bit differently than I thought it would, which I really pictured it as Patricia is an outsider to the family and sort of slowly works her way into their machinations and sort of takes over control, which happens for a while, and then it does not.
Yeah.
And then everyone kind of loses at the end, which I was not expecting, and the movie's pretty fun in its tone for the most part, but the ending is pretty dismal. Like, all of the characters that we've watched lose out pretty big in the end.
Yeah, it really seems like no one wins except for the what's his face?
I wrote his name down. Domenico De Sol.
Yeah, Domenico De Sol.
The fixer guy that they had.
Yeah, the guy who was just kind of there the whole time, who was like the right-hand man. Like, he's the guy who won in the end, and the people who bought the other shares
investors.
of the company.
Yeah.
The investors. They're the ones who won. Everyone else, yeah, they definitely lost by the end. And that's okay. You know, that's just what life is. And, you know, I'm sure that some parts were a little bit exaggerated, but to me, it felt like a lot of the stuff in this movie was, you know, pretty based on reality. It felt real. And at the same time, it felt a little exaggerated. Like, people don't really live like this. Like, I don't know if this is really how it went down, but as the movie went on, I was like, wow, this feels real. This feels like real life to me.
Yeah. Well, I think at a certain level of wealth, people do just kind of live like that, which is, they're all very wealthy at this point. Even Patricia at the start of the movie, like, she's not impoverished. It doesn't seem, at least the movie doesn't portray it that way. Like, her family owns a successful business. It's not like as glamorous as Gucci. It's a trucking business, but like, it's not like she's coming from the and maybe the movie misrepresents that, but it's not like she's coming from complete poverty and then finding her way into wealth. But it was interesting too to see the start of Tom Ford, who was a big designer and who was the creative director of Gucci for like 20 years or 10 years. Sorry, so. That's interesting.
Yeah. I did enjoy that, how they kind of mixed in like some other designers into the film, and like it wasn't just like Gucci. It was like let's tell like let's include some other stories in here too.
Yeah. Apparently, Ford described watching this movie as like surviving a hurricane. So that's interesting. Apparently, it seems he was not a fan. but yeah, I want to talk about Patricia and Mauricio a little bit and their relationship, because very early on, the first time they meet, she becomes very interested when she hears his name. And you can see the trope already forming with her character, like she is the social climber. She is going to try to get the money. And that's called out by Jeremy Irons to Mauricio. And she behaves that way for most of the movie, except after Mauricio loses his money initially when he walks away from his dad. So my question to you is, do you think that she was in it for the money purely, or do you think she did actually love him at that point? Because I don't think by the end of the movie either of them love each other at all. I think it's purely a money relationship.
Yeah, I think maybe in that moment when he arrives on her doorstep and he's like, I don't got any money to my name. I don't got a job. Like, I'm trying to become a lawyer.
Yep.
I think in that moment and the moments after that, I think that there was some actual love. Like there was some connection between them that wasn't just monetary based or like ambition based. It was like, we got each other.
Right.
And I definitely appreciated that. And, I think there was at one point in the movie where Maurizio's like, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. Like working at this truck place. Like,
yeah.
Why would I ever change that?
Exactly. And that's why I asked that question, because she is always pushing him to get back into the Gucci good graces. And I don't want to like say it's like, oh, she's the social climbing woman and I'm pinning it all on her, but it is her behavior is depicted in most of the film. And I wonder, it's like, did she know that she would be able to get back into the family's like graces at a certain point, or was she just being genuine at that early point in the film? Because like they do seem genuinely happy for a little while.
Yeah.
But she does lean in super close at that party at the beginning when he says his name is Gucci. You see her expression change. And then Adam Driver, Maurizio never wants to do any of the stuff with the family. It's always her convincing him to do it, and Aldo convincing him to do it eventually. But I just think that's interesting how there's that little brief window where it makes you think maybe this isn't about profit and money.
Oh, totally. I think that the film did a really good job of creating that interesting dynamic there between the two of them. Like, yeah, it wasn't just cut and dry, simple old trope of like, yeah, some money grubber who's trying to climb the ladder. It did feel genuine to me for a second. And God, I just had something and I lost it. It's okay. But I mean, I think that it was probably more of like a calculated risk on her point at some, or on her part at some point, maybe. Like she was like, he doesn't have the money, but I'm going to ride this out, see where it takes me. There could be a way that he could be folded back in to the family. Like I could probably manipulate him into doing that at some point.
She is incredibly manipulative throughout the film.
Yes.
And like, there's a word for it that I have been trying to remember for like days since I saw the movie, but like she switches her negotiating tactics like this. It's like depending on who she's talking to, and even within the same conversation with Maurizio later on when he has left her and she's like begging him for stuff outside of his house. Like she goes from like pleading to insulting him and all this stuff. And like when she's talking to Paolo or Aldo, she's behaving differently. Always like she's, and there's a word for it and I cannot remember what it is and it really bothers me. But she's very manipulative. She's not a very likable character, I don't think. She's driven, which is cool. But
she's a master manipulator.
Yeah, and even at the end, because and what really made her unlikable to me is at the end when it's established that like Maurizio is gonna financially support her and the kid. They're just not gonna be married anymore. She is like, fuck that, no, and because at this point, like it's been about the money for a while, and. So I'm like, I don't think she genuinely loves him anymore, and he doesn't love her. So she's not trying to stick for the love. She wants the returns that he's about to experience. And I'm like, ugh. And not that he's great either, but
no, yeah, I'll say kudos to like all the actors in this movie. Phenomenal performances all around. I think Lady Gaga did an amazing job. So did Adam Driver, Jared Leto, Al Pacino, Jeremy Irons. They were phenomenal across the board. Like I genuinely thought that all of them, they encapsulated the character like in their voice and their tone and their mannerisms and their, just their behavior. Their personality was there. Yeah. And it made us hate them. Like Lady Gaga's character, Patrizia, is such a goddamn bitch. Oh my God.
She's awful. Yeah. And the only one who I didn't like, I liked Aldo for the most part. He's a bit sexist, but he's like an old jovial Italian man. And I was like sad when he got betrayed and he realized what was going on. But yeah, no, they're not likable. They're all conceited rich douchebags who are just like all about the money.
Yeah, totally. But Adam Driver did a phenomenal job. Yeah, they were all really well done. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the big part of this movie that frustrates me, that I really just don't like, is that all these characters are assholes. I don't like or relate to any of them. Like maybe Adam Driver's character at the start, maybe Maurizio, because at the start, you know, he was reserved. He was a mouse. He was a mouse, like they were talking about, little moose. And you know, he was studying to become a lawyer, and whatever he wanted to do with that law degree, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they ever said if he was going to like use it for the family business or not.
They don't specify, but it's hard to tell.
Exactly. And you know, I kind of applauded him for that. I'm like, yeah, way to go. Like, try and get outside of the family business and make your own path. That's great. And I liked him at the start. And then it just goes downhill from there. He just becomes more conceited. He becomes more excessive. He becomes more self-obsessed.
Very true.
He didn't know anything about clothes to begin with, or at least not that they like
just running a business. Well, that was what I thought was interesting too. Is he was right in a sense that they needed to revolutionize the brand, because he, at those fashion shows, remember, he was getting told like, no one's going to design for you anymore. Like, you're out the door. So he had the right mindset to understand we need to revolutionize the brand, but he was a bad business person, and he was like using the business to buy for his luxury items for himself. So he just like completely fucked up within a couple of years, it seemed like. About Maurizio, though, real quick, he kind of interesting because Al Pacino's in this as well, but Maurizio kind of reminded me about Michael Corleone. It reminded me of Michael Corleone from The Godfather, because he starts out as a good-seeming person, sort of doing his own thing in a way outside of the family business, and then throughout the course of the story, he is pulled in by forces both outside of and within his control, but basically he makes a series of choices and ends up becoming a worse version of what was there before, which I think was interesting. It was interesting to watch. He was sort of corrupted and maybe that was part of the reason he was leaving or doing his own thing initially, is he was worried about that, and he just gets sucked in, and then he becomes an asshole who dies.
Well, yeah. I love that you made that comparison, and it's so fitting because of Al Pacino in this film. Great connection there, because Al Pacino was in The Godfather.
He was Michael.
He was Michael. He was the main character, so I think that's a great connection to draw in there. And you know, it was kind of like what Maurizio was saying. Like, I think they were in a car ride, and they were talking about the Gucci name, and he's like, you know, everyone wants a slice of it, and then once you have a slice of the cake, then you want the whole cake, and then you don't want anyone else to have the cake. And then I think that's exactly what you were talking about with the corruption. Like, once you get a little bit of the taste, you just can't get enough, and it just consumes you. And I think that's exactly what happened to Maurizio and also Michael Corleone.
And Patrizia. It's exactly what happens. Like, it's basically lining her arc up for us, because like, Aldo set them up. Like, they didn't ask for it. He's like, you're going to be my director of world operations or something, and you're going to both be rich, have an office, and have a place in New York, and all that stuff. Like, what more do you want than that? But no. And I think, you know what? I think it shifted. It's when they're talking about the knockoffs. Aldo makes an offhanded comment to Patricia. It's like, this is you're a woman, you don't get this. Like, he says some like sexist thing. It's like, this is a man's business, and I think that's where she shifts with him, because she starts moving against him right after that.
Yeah,
but
no, yeah, I think that's a good point. And yeah, those knockoffs, that was like interesting that so many people were getting away with making these knockoffs, and I feel like people still kind of do today, but probably not to the same extent.
Well, my family and I had different takes on this. I assumed that it was just other people were making the knockoffs, and Aldo was fine with it because it's the cheap person's imitation of his product, which in a sort of backwards way elevates the prestige of the actual product. My family seemed to think that Gucci was also producing the knockoffs, but they were just cheaper materials. Which way do you go with that?
Oh, I I don't see any benefit for them producing it and then selling it at a fraction of the cost. Like, that doesn't.
I assumed it was the first one as well because I mean, just the idea that people want to look like they have your stuff elevates your prestige, right? Like, if you care enough to make a fake one, the original's got to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So
people will pay for the image. That's what people want. They want the illusion of power and greed and excess. They don't want it necessarily because it kind of comes with a lot of baggage, I'd say. But hey, here I am just being a person in Denver who doesn't make nearly as much money as Gucci.
No, but it is an interesting point Aldo makes. It's like the rich person, they want Gucci, they go buy Gucci. The poor person, they want Gucci, they can't buy Gucci, but they can buy this thing that looks like it. Where's the harm in that? Like, I kind of like his laissez-faire attitude about it. It like he has a motive for it, obviously, but it's like he could have been an asshole about it and really hunted them down and like stopped it, but he doesn't care.
Yeah, kind of chill about it.
Yeah. But yeah, you were talking about how everyone's assholes. You want to get back to that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I'll just finish that thought. Because, the point of the film is that they're all kind of assholes, and it does speak to the quality of the acting skill here. Like, everyone's phenomenal, and if you can, it's kind of like the whole thing with Cersei's character from Game of Thrones. Like, I remember hearing that, like, at Game of Thrones conventions, people would come up to that actress. I can't remember her name, but they would
Lena Headey,
or they would want to go talk to the actor who played Jon Snow and Arya and Robb Stark and like all these other people like Daenerys, because they're their favorite characters. They're the good guys, but they will not go talk to the actress who played Cersei because they hate her.
That's
well, no, they hate the character.
Oh yeah, I know.
Thing. Like,
yeah. That's weird. I'd never heard that. I always heard like Jack Gleason, who played Joffrey, said he was worried about that for a while, but he never had that experience. People were super nice, which is good. But maybe they had different experiences. I'm not discounting that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think this was like an article or a quote that I heard a long time ago, so maybe I'm getting it wrong a little bit. But like, that speaks to just how good of a job she did, just embodying that character and bringing it to life and really making her a villain.
Yeah.
And these actors, Adam Driver, Lady Gaga, they did a great job of bringing these characters to life and making them just unlikable. And that's terrific for me. But, that's terrific. But for me, I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect.
Okay.
I'm not saying every movie needs to have like a likable protagonist that I'm rooting for and I want to see succeed and I want to connect with. But damn, like none of these characters for me had redeeming qualities, like, with the exception of Aldo maybe, but, they were all just kind of like meh. Like I just didn't want to see any of them succeed. So at the end of the film, I didn't feel sorry for any of them. I was like, they all kind of got their comeuppance, I guess. At least like with The Godfather, like we were just talking about, like The Godfather, he's a horrible guy. He's horrible. Like Michael Corleone is like, he turns into this big villain.
Don't spoil 3 for me, please. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I won't spoil all 3 movies. I'm gonna try and like walk around that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong here, but I was rooting for Michael, throughout those 3 movies. Like I want to see him win. I like him as a character. It's kind of like the anti-hero effect, I guess. Like, I don't know. I feel like that was a big disconnect for me, that there wasn't really a likable protagonist here.
Okay.
And I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority here of this. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? Did you like any of the characters besides Aldo? Or
well, at the beginning I liked Maurizio. I liked Paolo because he's just like a dumbass. Like he's a dumbass and he's really funny and like he just wants to make stuff and he's just screwed over at every point. And it's like he's not good and that's fine, but he's trying and everybody's just so mean to him because he's just so stupid. And I don't think he deserved to die in poverty, which is what happens to him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so hurt by their betrayal at the end. It was,
Yeah.
but he had a great line. He was like, I forget who he was talking about, but he's just like, he's something pretending to be an asshole or something like that. And it was so funny. He said the dumbest shit. And he gets, I did enjoy the scene where Jeremy Irons just takes him down a peg, where he's like, you can never show these to anyone. You are terrible at what you do.
You are so goddamn incompetent. Like,
yeah, but the way that what they do to him is so brutal. Patricia convinces him to spin off and do his own line to the extent that he's having a show, and then they just destroy him publicly. Like a complete public execution of this guy who's a family member who just wanted to make clothes.
Yeah, it was so sad. Like it's upsetting to think about the real world person who suffered through this.
Yeah, and maybe the real guy was an asshole too. And I mean, maybe he's not even the best person in this either. I do agree, none of them are great people. But I mean, the worst thing Aldo does is fraud, which who in the upper financial sectors of the market does not commit fraud, probably, allegedly. So whatever. And he's casually sexist, but he's a fucking ancient Italian man. Of course he's a little bit sexist.
No, yeah. Honestly, I think my favorite character was probably either Paulo or Aldo. I think Paulo was just a great spot of comedic relief, and we haven't really talked about the makeup on him.
Yeah, and the prosthetics. It's really impressive.
Oh my God, if it wasn't for Jared Leto's eyes, his 1,000-yard stare eyes, I would not have guessed that was Jared Leto at all a day in my life.
Yeah, did you hear what he said he did to prepare for this role? It's so funny. I think he prep for House of Gucci. I think he just I chugged olive oil, I snorted spices. He said, okay, Jared Leto. The headline was just there and it went away. Jared Leto says he had him snorting lines of arrabbiata sauce and
What?
Oh my God. Okay, HuffPost. Let me read the whole quote. It better have the whole quote. I was snorting lines of arrabbiata sauce in the middle of this movie. I had olive oil for blood. If you took a biopsy of my skin, it would come back as Parmesan cheese.
Oh my God. That's fucking weird.
Calling the film his love letter to Italy, Leto offered up a bizarrely anatomical metaphor to explain just how much he enjoyed and embraced playing Paolo, which required him to undergo a physical transformation by way of prosthetics and makeup. I climbed into that creative cave and came out through the bowels and intestines into the esophagus of the one and only Paolo Gucci. Bringing Paolo to life was like birthing a bowling ball out of my sphincter.
What the fuck?
I keep saying my butt was shaking like two little chicken bones on that set. This man is unhinged.
Yeah, it sounds like this broke him. Spending that much time in prosthetics in Italy.
No, I think he's just like this. I think this is just him.
That would make sense.
Remember when he just walked out of the desert and was like, I didn't even know COVID was happening. I was on an 8-week spiritual retreat in the desert and just came out and the world was ending. It's like, Jared, what are you doing?
That man is an enigma.
Well, he birthed a bowling ball out of his sphincter to deliver Paolo Gucci to the world.
Yeah, if this movie wins any awards, I want it to be for Paolo
And the costumes too. I mean, especially in that ski sequence. That was the first image from the film. Is them in those like white sweaters, and they look great.
Oh, they looked fantastic. But yeah, that makeup and the prosthetics on him were great. Even the makeup on Jeremy Irons looked really good too. I'd say, and Lady Gaga, she looked fantastic.
Yeah.
But like Paulo, that is an insane transformation. I'm
it really
very impressed
is.
by
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, just a random note. I thought Pina, Salma Hayek's character, who is like the tarot card reader, who I think is a hilarious addition to the story. Patricia just sees her like obviously scamming on TV and is like, I buy into this. And then she keeps her around for years. Yeah. And it just reminded me of for anyone who's seen Silicon Valley, the like sort of Steve Jobs analog in that show, Gavin Belson has a spiritual advisor, and this spiritual advisor is just making shit up and scamming him and telling what he wants to hear. And there's a scene in this movie that reminds me specifically of that, where Gavin is like thinking of making a potentially like dangerous move against the main characters, and the spiritual advisor is like, but maybe after we go to Mexico, you do that. And then Pina had a similar line in this, when she's like, what if I had Mauricio killed? And she's like, after the vacation.
let's clear our heads for a second, and then we'll come back to that
it's like,
idea.
let's because she's just like living large off of this woman's bank account for like 20 years, which I thought was so funny.
Oh yeah, that was such a great addition to the story. Like, I might go out and like, or at least read a synopsis of this book. I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but like, you know, just to like learn more about that relationship between her and the psychic medium, like that is like such a bizarre kind of thing to happen. But I mean, you know, back in the 80s or 70s,
it was the late 70s through the 90s is when the movie takes place.
Like, I'm just trying to think of when they like started like talking to each other. You know, it's like, how else are you going to get your psychic readings? You have to either read the newspaper and read the like horoscope section, or you're going to call someone on TV that you see. Like, the internet didn't exist back then.
Yeah. I enjoyed it was a live TV show too. Like, could you imagine being Maurizio and you just like flip through the channels and you hear your wife's voice on this medium's TV show? Like, what are you doing?
What is she doing?
But I did enjoy Mauricio's descent into douchebaggery, and that line he has when she's like begging him. She's like, I married a monster. And he's like, no, you married a Gucci. Like, I told you. It's like, I told you this is what happens, and this is what happened. Like, and I don't feel bad about it. And he's so cold by the end. He's just like, I don't love you anymore. Like, we're not going to be married. That's it. Moving on.
I know. He really did kind of do a 180 in this movie. And, you know, I think that could have also been an area where they could have spent a little bit more time, maybe, is like showcasing that change for him. Because it kind of seemed a little quick. Like,
I didn't think so at all. That's interesting.
Well, I don't know. I go back and forth on it in my head a lot on this point. Like, you know, because the movie is about them, like Maurizio and Patrizia. So there is a lot of development and character growth for them. But, you know, I don't know. I just feel like one day he just kind of decides, like, fuck it.
I think what it was is when he had to, like, escape to the mountains, to Switzerland, I think is where he goes. He was, like, separated from her for a little bit, and he probably just had the realization, it's like, I've been doing what she said for years, and I've put my uncle in jail, I've alienated my cousin, and, like, my dad's dead, and, like, I've been following her advice, and it's completely destroyed my family, and then she shows up, and it's like, obviously the blonde lady is hitting on him, and she has a right to be pissed about that, but she starts being, like, super rude to his friends. He's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what are you doing? And I don't know. I thought him falling out of love with her made a lot of sense based on the events of the movie. Like, he's still a piece of shit at the end. But I didn't think... Yeah. I felt him falling out of love with her. The part that really bugged me was well, I guess he wanted shared custody of the kid, and he was going to financially support them. So it's like, he's not a total monster at the end. He just, like, doesn't give a shit about Patricia anymore, and he's very blunt about that.
Yeah, he is, and he's just spending the money like crazy. He's like, I can do whatever I want with my life now. I'm gonna live it excessively.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Uh,
it's interesting that Aldo was almost kind of right in a way. It's portrayed very, and it's a very shitty thing to say to your family members, like, all you have because of me. Don't forget that. But I guess he does forget that, and then he fucks it up.
yeah, he really fucks it. Just shifting gears real quick. I just kind of wanted to maybe draw this back to reality real quick because I read an article that the Gucci family, or at least like the surviving
Whoever's left,
whoever's left, there is a daughter of Aldo, I believe, who put out a statement on behalf of the family. I can't remember her name, but I don't think like, I don't know if Patrizia Maurizio's daughter said anything, but Aldo's offspring, his sole daughter, apparently like released a statement for the film. They didn't really enjoy it. They didn't like the film. They called it like an insult to their legacy, and I mean, I don't know how much credibility there is there because one of them got convicted for fraud, and the other one got convicted for murder.
Right.
So not exactly like a cut and dry, law-abiding family. But apparently they weren't consulted very much for this film or at all. And they just kind of felt insulted by the film. And, interestingly too, I read that Patrizia, Lady Gaga's character, is now out of jail. Because she didn't have a life sentence. It was only like 20-something
29 years, yeah.
29 years. And apparently she doesn't enjoy the film either.
I would imagine not. I really, if I were her, I also would not like it.
I'd hate any biopic about me.
For real. But I'm interested to learn more about the actual historical events now, because is it that they were not accurately portrayed, or is it that it paints them unfavorably? I would be interested to know which of the two, or it's probably a blend of both, but that is interesting to know that they were not consulted or asked, and they don't like it. But
yeah, well, I think, because it's kind of like all those people are dead, or just about all of them, except for Patrizia. I think that they kind of had some, and since it's like a public company now, I think they had like some leeway with the story and the rights of everything. So, but it is kind of interesting. But yeah, what you were just saying, I think, just circling back. So, do you think that these characters were like exaggerated at all? Do you think that they felt genuine, or like did they feel like kind of overly campy? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think in biopics like this, they're always going to be exaggerated for the sake of drama and entertainment. And I think I go into these expecting that. But so yes, they are exaggerated for sure. But I think they were all decently realistic. Like maybe Paolo was a little bit cartoonish, but I thought that was funny, so I don't care. But Maurizio I found to be a very natural character. Patricia I did as well. Aldo, same. I mean, and Jeremy Irons was Rodolfo. He's a more minor character because he dies pretty early on, but I thought he was a very realistic portrayal for like a very wealthy father. And his relationship with his son, Maurizio, felt natural for that dynamic. And it's like that sort of twofold idea that's like, on the one hand, you're being super shitty and assuming something about Patricia. On the other hand, you're trying to protect your son and your wealth from someone who is trying to take it, which is sort of what she was trying to do ultimately. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think the film is necessarily trying to say anything specifically about people who do that. I think it's just telling this story. But, I think everyone was down to earth enough to be not distracting. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree for the most part. I feel like, they definitely leaned into that, like the conceited rich person trope a little bit at points. And you have a note here about just finding it funny. And I agree. Some points it was funny to see those kind of, that trope come to light. But I do think that there's a little bit of exaggeration with these characters. Like, Patrizia, as soon as she joins the Gucci family, she just forgets that she has another family, like an original family, and they're never mentioned again or seen on screen again. And that's okay, but like in reality, I'm sure that she kept in touch with her family a little bit more than she did.
Right.
And,
it's not the focus of the story, so I understand it being cut, but
exactly.
But I mean, to your point, was it just not there because it's not part of the story, or was it not there because Ridley Scott and his editor are trying to say she doesn't give a fuck about them now that she's out? Like, if that is their intention, that's an interesting line they're coming down on with her character. But I don't know if that's what they were trying to do.
Oh, totally. And, I think we're going on, like, the point of, like, people are multi-layered. They're complex. It's not just, like, I'm greedy and I'm ambitious and I want money. It's like, no, I have hobbies. I have dreams. I love my family and I like seeing my friends and I want to go skiing sometimes. And then maybe I want to go, like, down to a comedy club. Like, I'm not just going to, like, focus on business my entire life.
Right.
There's other things I want to do. So I think, in that light, maybe just because they were so hyper-focused on Gucci, maybe that was just like kind of where it was like a little bit more exaggerated. But, you only have 2.5 hours to tell this complex story.
Yeah.
You're going to cut some things and you're going to exaggerate some things and make some characters a little bit more simple and not so multi-layered.
Well, and you have dumbasses making think pieces about how movies should really not be longer than 2 hours as it is, which is a very childish take. But I think the movie overall, it's about the fall of an empire. Like, it's called House of Gucci. It's like it's the crumbling of an empire and how it was supplanted by something else, which is a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
So the family lost and the business endured, which is a sad story. But
yeah, no, that's so true. And I wrote down this other question here too, because I didn't like a lot of these characters, and I feel like the story Ridley Scott made a really good, like, creative choice of telling the story in this format, this kind of narrative structure, focusing mainly on Patrizia and Maurizio. A part of me wonders, like, if there's people out there in the world like me who would have appreciated a more likable and relatable protagonist, would it have made more sense, do you think, possibly to instead make, like, their daughter the main character of the story and it kind of jumps around a little bit more rather than, like, a straightforward narrative?
Maybe. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. But she's so young for most of the story, and she's not even alive for a decent part of it. Like, you wouldn't have any of those scenes with Aldo or Paolo or, like, because it's all... Cause it would be like Star Wars Episode 1 syndrome, where, like, everything happening in the plot is kind of outside of the control of who I think is meant to be the protagonist, Anakin. I don't really know. But I think it would be kind of like that, where it's like the conversations all the adults are having are, like, above her head. But
that's fair. Yeah. I just
you could tell a story about the daughter. Like, if you wanted to tell a story focusing on maybe the trial of Patricia, but from the point of view of her daughter, like, that would be a fucking cool story, because that's pretty fucked up to be a kid and have your dad be murdered in a, like, that your mom hired a hit on him. Like, you have to go through watching your mom go to prison for having your dad murdered, which is something we haven't even talked about yet, hilariously. That Patricia and her psychic put out a hit, and they're like, they just have a meeting in broad fucking daylight with hitmen, and then only pay them half, and then the hitmen are, like, amazingly amateur. No mask, no anything, just, like, run up and shoot him in a public square.
At least he used a silencer. I noticed that. He used a silencer.
At that point, don't even bother. Like, why? I
know. You're already right there in public, and
in the middle of the day. Yeah, it's like...
And I don't think it was such a great silencer, too, because that doorman came out with a bat. Like, I'm ready to fuck someone up. Oh, shit, he's got a gun.
Yeah. Well, apparently silencers in real life do not work like they do in movies. It's still incredibly loud. But yeah, like, I almost lose respect for him for the silencer at that point. I'm like...
Just be a man and kill him loud.
Yeah, but that was so funny, and the meeting scene was really funny too between them.
Yeah.
And what a weird series of events. What an absurd story.
Oh, totally. And I think that you're totally hitting the nail on the head there about like that would be a story that I'd watch, like maybe like a 3-part miniseries or something like that of like the daughter's take on it, like having to go through the trial and grapple with that reality of, oh, my mom killed my dad indirectly but directly, and it's like, wow, that would be a lot to grapple with growing up, like because I think that she was probably like, I don't know, 10 at the time.
Yeah, super young. I mean, awful stuff. But I'm glad we got
totally
this story. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Just an absurd movie. I loved it.
Yeah, before we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here, but I think that we have to talk about the accents.
Okay, yeah.
Because I've seen some article headlines. I didn't really read the articles, honestly. Yeah, like some people are critiquing these accents. Like, why?
Why you do this?
Why'd you do this to me outside here? Like, what did you think of the accents?
I don't care. It was fine. No, I mean, I do. I'm being facetious. Like, they didn't bother me. I'm not super familiar with the intricacies of the Italian accent, so like most of them felt fine. Jeremy Irons dips in and out a little bit. Adam Driver did a little bit as well. Jared Leto was just on a fucking other planet. But as he himself basically outlined, but I loved what he was doing. Lady Gaga's, I think, was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
And she was probably the most consistent. I think Al Pacino bled out of it a little bit too, but I just I don't know. I thought it was fun. It didn't take me out of the movie ever. Did you?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I would agree. I think with the exception of Jeremy Irons a little bit, like, fantastic actor. He's amazing. But like whenever I heard him speak, I could just kind of hear a little bit of like, I don't know, English influence bleeding through a little bit there. And, that's totally fine. Like, you got to do the best you can with what you got.
Yeah.
And, honestly, yeah, I thought the accents were pretty great all around. Everyone did a really good job with them. But yeah, Paulo's was very funny. It felt exaggerated at points.
How could you do this?
He should be the new Mario.
I've heard people say that. Yeah. Well, apparently Chris Pratt's not going to do the voice. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah. What?
Yeah. Like, what? Why are you even doing this? What's the point? Like,
yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
Mario has two things that are identifiable: his costume and his accent. He's not a character. He's like a sprite. Sorry if I've offended any Mario fans, but he doesn't have that much depth. I'm sorry.
Boo, play, pause, rewind, boo. No, please don't boo us.
It's fine. I'll delete your comments.
But yeah, we talked about the accents. I guess to kind of maybe close things out, Dylan, did you have a favorite part of this film? I know I did. And I've kind of already talked about him a little bit. It was Paulo.
Yeah.
Funny character, great comedic relief. And yeah, just his dynamic with Al Pacino as well.
Yeah.
Like when they were like, he's like, "You're an idiot, but you're my idiot."
And he says that multiple times too. He's like,
I thought that was so sweet.
He is protective of him in a way. And the scene when Al Pacino gets out of jail and they're looking for Paolo's car in the garage. And he keeps walking back and forth, and he's like, "Paolo, what type of car is it? It's a Fiat." It's like it's right here. It's like you're literally right next to it. It's so funny. Yeah, I think those two are my favorite. I love Al Pacino. It's good. I think he was having a lot of fun here. So
yeah, Al Pacino, he's fantastic, and I'm glad that he got to be involved in this film.
Yeah, great. I think it was a great, fun movie, and glad I saw it.
Yeah, me too.
I'd recommend
a good film. Yeah, but if you're looking for like likable characters, maybe not this movie.
No, probably not. But
That's okay.
wholehearted recommendation from me. I think like Ridley Scott's a great director. You should see the shit he makes. It's good. He's very upset that people didn't see The Last Duel. He blames millennials and their iPhones, which is very funny. But
oh, did he do that one too?
yeah, he did The Last Duel as well.
Oh,
Which it was in theaters here for like 5 minutes, which is super annoying. And I just happened to be like, I think it was like my birthday. I had out of town company and I was out of town. So I didn't get to go see it. And I missed it.
Oh, shoot.
So soon. Ridley, I wasn't on my phone the whole time. But it's like, whatever. He's 83 years old. He's going to say some dumb shit sometimes. It happens. I saw on the Weekly Planet podcast I listened to today, they said, like, the Grandpa Simpson meme, it'll happen to you. Like, it'll happen to all of us.
It'll happen to you.
Yeah.
Love it.
But, yeah, that wraps up House of Gucci. Go see it. It's a fun time. Other stuff, Niles, what have you been watching, reading, doing, playing?
Yeah. The new Hawkeye MCU series has hit the streaming service, and watched the first 2 episodes, and so far I'm liking it.
I like it. I think it's fun. I watched it as well. What do you think about our new protagonist, Kate Bishop? Because she is sort of the main protagonist of the show, more than Clint, I think.
Yeah, I like her a lot, and I think she's gonna be a good stand-in for Hawkeye moving forward. She's got a good energy about her, and I do like the direction that they're taking with this series too. Like the first episode, I was like, this is so different from the other series that they put out for the MCU. Like this weird dynamic with someone coming in and marrying your mom. That's kind of interesting.
It's a Christmas show. It's a Christmas show.
I
love it. I like, and I agree. It's really distinct from the other shows. I think this year at least, Marvel has been just crushing it with the TV department more than the films. I mean, Shang-Chi is great. Eternals I liked a lot, but the shows are just on another level right now. I think they're
pretty good. And I think this is probably when compared to the other shows that have been released so far, I think, WandaVision is still up there at the top, and then Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then Hawkeye right now.
Okay.
I think it's got a lot to prove. But I got high hopes for it, so I'm liking that. And then I also started watching another anime show that was recommended to me on Netflix. It's called Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yep, I've heard about that.
And it's kind of basically Pacific Rim kind of.
It's mecha anime. It's the genre.
Yeah, it's mecha anime, which is the part that I'm really interested in. Is these gigantic robots fighting these monsters called the Angels, and every time that an angel attacks Earth, it takes a different form. So sometimes it's just kind of one big baddie versus the other, and then sometimes it's this gigantic cube off in the distance that can fire that can hit you with a shot from miles away, and then sometimes it's a sea creature. It's really cool. So that's the part I really like about it. The part I don't really like about the series so far, it was made in 1995. And it was clearly made for the male demographic.
Okay.
And by that I mean there's a lot of kind of hypersexualization of the female characters, which I'm not a big fan of. But I'm kind of getting through that just for the mecha stuff. I like the mecha stuff. But yeah, enough about that. Dylan, what about you?
Yeah, I watched the first episode of Amazon's Wheel of Time. They released 3 in the first week, and I think there might be another one out now. But it's the Wheel of Time is a very well-regarded fantasy series. It's 14 books written by Robert Jordan until he died, and then finished by Brandon Sanderson. But I didn't think it was that good based on the first episode. I'm going to keep watching it because I think it will get better, and I am assuming that everyone who says the Wheel of Time is good is correct. It just felt a little cheap to me, but it's a new fantasy series on its first episode, so I'm like, okay, I'll give it some time. It has Rosamund Pike in it, and the guy who plays Roose Bolton is one of the main character's dads, which is kind of funny. But it's just I don't know. I enjoyed it enough, and I want to keep exploring it, but it just felt too clean, almost. Like a lot of the sets and the hairstyles, and like one of the main guys has like very close cropped red hair and no facial hair at all. It just felt too like modern a lot of the time. But I don't want to critique it too heavily. I've literally watched an hour of what will probably be like a 60-hour, 70-hour show. So like,
right.
That'd be like critiquing Game of Thrones off the pilot, which is not smart. So I'm going to hold off. I'm going to keep watching it. I made my family watch the first arc of Arcane when I was home, the League of Legends show.
Nice. Do they like it?
They liked it fine. I don't think they're going to keep watching it, but I hope they do. But I like that show a lot. I think it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I still need to check it out. Yeah, I've heard like a few different people that tell me like read the Wheel of Time, and I'm like, I got a reading list this long. I gotta like do that first, but that is on the list.
Yeah,
well,
it's
great
like
things about it.
It's like a 14-book long series, and each book is like 1,000+ pages. So it's like it's a big endeavor.
Yeah, that is.
Like the author didn't even get through it. It's.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry, that was kind of tasteless. But yeah, I want to read it at some point. I've had the first book for a long time. That was the book that you know this story. I'll tell the story. So I won't get too many specifics, but I was at work late having drinks with people, and someone told me I should read The Wheel of Time. And as a gesture of like goodwill, I'm like, I will go buy it right now. And I was pretty drunk at this point, so I wasn't paying total attention. And I pay for the Amazon account my family uses, and my mom happened to be moving around that time and was shopping for some furniture. And she saved things by putting them in the cart. And I didn't know this. So I get home later this week. This is when us two were roommates. And I find 2 massive Amazon packages in my apartment. They're desks. And I'm like, that's interesting. I guess Niles is getting ready for his new place because y'all are about to move out. And then I eat dinner, and I look at them. They're addressed to me. So my $8 copy of Eye of the World, the first book of the Wheel of Time series, accidentally also purchased $300 of desks. I was able to get some of that money back, but not all of it. So the Wheel of Time better be good, because that first book came out to almost $200 for me.
If it does not meet that value, it is not worth your time.
Yeah. But on the note of time, thank you all for spending the last hour of it with us, listening to us talk about the House of Gucci and other things as well. We'll be back with a new episode in in 2 weeks' time. I don't remember what it's about. Let me see if I find that.
I think we're doing Spider-Man.
Right? Squid Game. We're going to talk about Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Yeah. We missed it when it came out. So we're going to do Squid Game on December 15th, and then Spider-Man December 29th.
Squid Game.
Yeah. So look forward to that for the rest of the year. And we're thinking about, in 2022, we'll start doing some more YouTube exclusive content as well, potentially build out that a little bit. So if you want to check that out, subscribe to that channel. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, thank you for watching along with us. Like and subscribe, please. Leave a comment if you'd like, and if you're on an audio platform, leave us a 5-star review, and if it's funny, we'll read it at some point. But that helps us out in a lot of ways, apparently. Niles, where can people find you online?
People can follow me on Instagram right now at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people find you?
On Twitter at D-Day Movies, on Instagram at DylanD1026, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, on Twitch at D-Day_movies. I think that's it. All that stuff is, for both of us, is linked down the description. And yeah, I think that'll do it for us this week, unless you got anything else.
No, but thank you all for listening. We really appreciate all of our listeners and anyone who's checking this show out for the first time. We appreciate it. And, it's our first shot at a podcast, and we hope you're enjoying it as much as we like making it.
Yeah. All right. Well, peace out, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.